Why didn't Melissa Gilbert say anything? Dean Butler has been a part of her life for a long time, so why is she finally talking now? Because no one saw what she just said coming. Not her longtime fans, and especially not those they thought that Laura and Almanzo's love tale was perfect. Was Dean the one she loved the most? Was there real chemistry between them, or was it all for show? And what has Melissa been keeping to herself? For years? Stay till the end, since you might never hear what she eventually said. You won't be able to watch that famous TV romance the same way again. The show and the love that everyone believed. You probably know Melissa if you watched Little House on the Prairie as a kid. Gilbert. Most people remember her for her romantic relationship with Dean on film. Butler. And yes, let's be honest, that part alone made her unforgettable. People couldn't stop gushing about how great the show was. Little House on the Prairie was about the Ingalls family, who lived in a little wooden cottage in the middle of nowhere. They didn't have a lot of money, but they had each other, which made them affluent in a different manner. But they didn't always have it easy. There were storms, sickness, or hard times sometimes. The winters. But they never stopped trying. They were always there for each other, took care of their neighbors, and tried to do the right thing. The narrative was about a small girl named Laura Ingalls. A lot of interest and a big heart. She didn't have a phone or expensive toys, but she did have adventure, family, and affection. And that made her narrative stand out. People liked the show since it brought back them of what important, like family, being nice, and never giving up, even when things are rough. The young actress Melissa Gilbert played Laura. At the time, she was roughly 10 years old when she began to portray the part. And the truth is, folks who saw her grow up on TV thought they knew her. They saw her laugh, cry, and learn lessons about life every week. As the show let her character expand as she got older. Laura began going to school and helping around the house and fell in love in the end. Things are starting to get interesting now. Dean Butler played Almanzo Wilder in the show. Laura fell in love with him. Fans saw something immediately away when Dean appeared on TV. He had a calm, gentle, and strong charisma that made you feel like you could trust him. And when she met Almanzo for the first time, it was like you could feel her heart skip a beat. That's how sincere their relationship seemed. People didn't simply watch Laura and Almanzo fall, they really thought they were in love. Fans started asking about their chemistry since it felt so real and natural. If they were actually in love outside of the camera. The way he stared at her in the wedding scenes, you could have sworn that what she was doing was real and not acting. Everyone thought there was something going on behind the camera. Along with the reality that those times were when celebrities weren't big on social media, they didn't post much online. There were no Instagram posts or behind-the-scenes videos to gratify our curiosity. There were only episodes. And some magazine interviews. That mystery made everything much more amazing. People wanted Melissa and Dean to be dating in secret. In the meantime, Melissa and Dean didn't talk much. Explained how they were connected during the show. They didn't say anything for years. They didn't say yes or no, not deny anything. They seemed to leave everything up to our imaginations. And you know what? It worked. Because fans' imaginations went wild. No one knows what is going on behind the lovely romance scenes. What's going on? Did they get along well? Did they care about each other? Or was it all just a lot of acting well? For decades, fans will have to wonder. But Laura and Almanzo's love tale still became one of the most important sections of the program. It gave the series life. It gave fans hope. And it made Dean Butler and Melissa Gilbert famous. People didn't just listen in to see life on the prairie and that love grow. But occasionally, what we see on things weren't precisely what they were on TV, and the questions kept coming up as time went on. What was going on between Dean and Melissa behind the scenes? Why didn't they ever talk about it? What about it? And most importantly, what was the truth? So, after years of not saying anything, Melissa is finally ready to talk. But before we get into the truth about her and Dean, we need to go back. Because Melissa Gilbert's journey didn't begin on the prairie. Her life before Little House on the Prairie, there were a lot of twists and turns. She didn't grow up on a farm like Laura Ingalls did. Her tale is totally not the same. It wasn't always easy for her to become a TV celebrity. It started a long time ago. Now, let's leave the prairie fields behind and look at the small child behind the we fell in love with her famed braids and sunbonnet because they made us feel like we knew her. Shed new insight on her relationship with Dean Butler. From a regular girl to a prairie star before Melissa Gilbert was known as the girl with the renowned braids or a household name, she was born on May 8, 1964, in Los Angeles, California, and was only a small girl. Actor and comedian Paul Gilbert and his wife Barbara Crane, who is also a dancer and actress, adopted her a day after she was born. Paul Gilbert, a comedian, and his wife Barbara Crane, a dancer and actress, got married just a day after she came into being. From then on, Melissa was part of a famous family, although things weren't always easy. Smooth. Her early years were full of stress, even though her parents loved her. And perplexity, especially when it came to figuring out where she fit in with her family of entertainers. Her adopted father, Paul Gilbert, was kind and amusing. He regularly brought Melissa with him to tryouts and performances. From a very young age, she saw cameras, lights, and actors. This made her feel like the world of television was normal, like it was just a part of life. And she was already on her way to fame, even though she didn't completely comprehend it yet. She was already performing ads when she was 7. Her natural attractiveness made her stand out. She wasn't a loud or showy youngster, she was just herself. Casting agents thought she was great. Her expressive eyes and her ability to say lines without trying too hard. It didn't take long for her to get her first jobs in TV. She did a few tiny parts in advertisements, just enough to get saw. Then, when Melissa was 9 years old, she went to an audition that transformed her life. She tried out for the part of Laura Ingalls, the bold and adventurous girl from Little House on the Prairie. The producers were seeking for someone exceptional. Not simply anyone who could act, but someone who may be the core of the show. Her screen test was what sealed the deal. Test with Michael Landon, the actor and producer of the show. Michael wasn't simply the main dude on the show. He played Charles Ingalls, Laura's father, who was compassionate and worked hard. But he was much more essential to Melissa when they weren't on film. Michael became a friend to them from the first day they met. A father to her. He saw something in her that other people didn't. He helped her, kept her safe, and acted like she was family. Later, Melissa remarked that Michael was like a father to her. In her life, especially after her adoptive parents were divorced and she and her real father drifted apart. Grown alienated from her real father. But their connection didn't end when the cameras went off. Michael welcomed Melissa into his genuine family. She spent time with his kids, especially his daughter Leslie. They enjoyed sleepovers and shared secrets and became like sisters. The Landon mansion was like a second home to Melissa, where she felt welcome and cherished. For a little girl in Hollywood, that meant everything. It wasn't always simple for Melissa in real life. Her parents' marriage dissolved in the end, and she had a hard time with the idea of being stuck between two worlds, the beautiful life of a kid star and the quiet, uncertain feelings of a small girl trying to figure out who she is. But Michael was usually around. When she needed help, when she was confused, or when she wasn't sure what to do, he was only a phone call away in the future. Melissa will never forget that kind of relationship. She still calls Michael one of the most significant guys in her life, even years later. His faith in she gave her the strength to believe in herself. That set became like a second home to her. She had good ties with her co-stars, such as Allison Arngrim, who played Nellie Olson, and enjoyed years of fun and learning with them. These connections helped her grow as an actress and as a person. Melissa had been on Little House 4 years by the time she was a teenager. She had taped emotional scenes, dealt with tough issues, and carried the show on the Prairie through big plot points. She had learned how to deal with celebrity and how to handle criticism. And how to stay grounded. But the show was the largest shift that happened. Added a new character named Almanzo Wilder. Laura and Melissa were both getting older. It was time for her character to fall in love for the first time, and Dean Butler showed up. When Dean walked onto the set, everything changed. Laura and Almanzo, the characters they played, became the duo that everyone loves the best on the show. Fans couldn't help but fall in love with the chemistry. Fall in love with their narrative. But in the background, Melissa was still trying to figure out what it meant to act out a romance and what it meant when people started to question whether the romance was real. At that age, what did Melissa know about love? Was she acting or feeling anything real? And how did feigning to fall in love impact her life forever? The hard work that goes into romantic scenes. The world watched a charming, fearless child with two braids racing over broad fields in slow motion. But in reality, Melissa was just a young girl growing up in front of millions of people. And it wasn't always easy. At first, it was fun because she was only 9 when she first went in the shoes of Laura. It was all like a dream. She got to wear wonderful costumes, ride horses, and play on a set that appeared like it was from a different time. But as the seasons went by and Melissa grew older, something inside of her started to change. The part that used to seem fantastic started to feel weighty. Melissa stayed home when other kids went to school and hung out with pals after class. Spent a lot of time on set. She had to learn pages of lines, do what grown-ups told her to do, and offer over and again emotional performances. It may have seemed enjoyable on TV, but in real life, there was a lot of pressure on child actors. It was more difficult for Melissa because she had to be flawless at all times, at least in the eyes of the public. People thought of her as Laura. People who don't know you people would come up to her and expect her to act like the sweet girl on the television. But she wasn't Laura. She was simply a normal girl trying to become an adult. And for some reason, this reality started to puzzle her. As Melissa became older, she started to wonder things like, who am I? When does Laura end and when do I start? It was hard. Everyone around her they acted like she was the character, not the real person behind the braids and bonnet. Growing up in the spotlight was challenging. And it was more difficult to figure out who she was. When everyone else thought they knew. It didn't end there. When Dean was first brought up as a new character on the show who became her love interest and later her husband, it was incredibly difficult and very uncomfortable for her behind the scenes. She was still in her teens. She hadn't even had a real relationship yet, and now she had to act like she was in love on screen. Love on screen. She later said that filming those sequences with Dean was hard on her. And odd. Dean was, on the other hand, professional and friendly. But that didn't make it any easier for a 15-year-old girl who was only starting to understand her feelings. The crowd put even more pressure on them. Became impossible with their never-ending questions about whether they were really together. For Melissa, acting out that romance was like living in someone else's world. She wanted to make it happen. She wanted to please the fans. But sometimes she felt lost inside. She was learning how to act like a lady in love when she was still just a girl trying to figure out what love even meant. And this job brought more than just emotional chaos. There were things that were expected. She had to grin and appear good in every scene. She also had to get millions of people to believe her. That this adult love tale made sense, even though she wasn't quite ready. So, even if people were excited about Laura and Almanzo's romance, but Melissa was coping with her own problems. A world full of stress, confusion, and trying to figure out who they are. Also, Melissa had a hard time with something called misophonia while working on Little House on the Prairie. This signifies little. It sounds like biting or tapping truly bothered her and made her feel furious or uncomfortable. Even if no one else saw them. At the time, doctors didn't know what was wrong with the person, therefore she didn't know what to call how she felt. Later, she told others about what had happened to her. In an interview with the magazine People. What happened after the cameras stopped rolling? What happened to Melissa when no one was looking? Melissa's fight with the beauty standard in Hollywood. Melissa got the major role in the remake that came out in 1981. Of The Splendor in the Grass, and everything appeared like a new, exciting step in her acting career. Job. But this job came with strings that made her feel less confident and valuable. The producers and wardrobe staff had very clear ideas about how she should look on camera. Gone was the plain, healthy look of Laura Ingalls. Instead, Melissa was supposed to become a beautiful, attractive young woman who looked just like a Hollywood star. She remembers how weird and awkward the clothes selections felt at first. The clothes were tight and showed a lot of skin, which was extremely different from the modest Prairie dresses she was used to wearing in Little House. From the length of her skirts to the cut of the clothes she wore and how she arranged her hair. The company wanted Melissa to seem like the quintessential Hollywood starlet, someone who could wow people with both her looks and her acting. Starlet, someone who could wow people with her appearance as well as her acting. The sudden interest in her looks wasn't simply about costumes. The public and the media quickly noticed her new look, and Melissa felt like she was under a microscope. People who liked and didn't like the show started to talk about it. On her figure, face, and new style. It wasn't always nice. Some people were really hard on her for altering from the girl they had seen on TV and adored. The strain to keep up that dazzling look only got worse. At just 18 years old, Melissa had to deal with these expectations and made a choice that many young people: she elected to have plastic surgery, which is something that many Hollywood actresses do. She had a nose job not long after turning 18. In her own words from her biography Prairie Tale, she said the operation was not a big deal, but it was far harder than that. After the procedure, she was in a lot of agony and discomfort. She wrote, "I came out of my face stunned like hell after the operation. They put big pieces of gauze soaked in water in my nose. In liquid solutions to help with the discomfort. The surgery was just the start of a hard process of getting well. Because of problems, she had to have 2 more procedures to fix them. By the first one, the trip was hard on both my body and my mind." But that wasn't the only thing Melissa did. She also chose to get breast implants as time went on. The Hollywood standards of beauty were very high, and Melissa felt stuck between wanting to feel good about yourself and the need to look a certain way. It wasn't simply about being vain, it was about staying alive in an industry that typically judges women by how they look first. Melissa, on the other hand, took a brave and honest choice after years of making these changes. She took off her breast implants and quit coloring her hair red in 2015. Talking to people, she said in a magazine that her choice was one of the smartest things I've ever done. For her, taking out the implants were a way for her to take back control of her own body and health. It was a big change, moving away from attempting to fit into Hollywood's template and accepting who she really is. She has turned into talking about how unfair the beauty standards are for women in the entertainment industry. In an honest interview with Prevention magazine, she said she was frustrated with statements like anti-aging, claiming, "There is no such thing. It is rude and insulting. Getting older is not a problem, but a privilege," she said. "I'm getting older with gratitude. I want to see all of every line, every mark, it's part of who I am." This new way of looking at things shows how far Melissa has come. She used to change her looks to fit what Hollywood wanted when she was a young actress. Now she supports natural aging and accepting yourself. She tells people not to chase after things that are impossible but to love themselves as they are. To accept themselves as they are instead than trying to be perfect. There is still one name behind Melissa's new start. Dean Butler stays. What do they have to say now? What did she finally tell us? Stay with us as we go deeper. What she really feels about her relationship with Dean Butler. Melissa has never been afraid to tell the truth. In her memoir Prairie Tale, she tells all. Tea that admirers had been waiting for decades. "I was 15 and he was 23, she says. "I looked like a boy. I was shaped like a boy. When I was a tiny girl, and I had to act like I was in love with a grown man. That's not the lovely TV romance that folks thought it would be." She was still a teenager. She was uncomfortable in her own flesh, and now she had to kiss a man on camera who was about 10 years older than her. Don't forget that their first kiss was on TV for everyone to see. There was no warm-up, but no genuine chemistry. There were only lights, a camera, and a screenplay that told her to look in love. In her book, Melissa stated she was terrified and that the kiss felt awkward. Weird. She felt like a youngster pretending to be a grown-up. Dean also knew it. During interviews, he said he could feel the age difference and worked hard to be polite and professional. But here's the best part. Melissa told me that she had a real-life crush on someone else. And it wasn't Dean. Her heart was with Rob Lowe, the adolescent heartthrob she loved at the time. Went on to have a meaningful relationship with. Dean, on the other hand, was more like a helpful coworker. We were never romantic, she said to make it clear. Dean was like a big brother. The scripts didn't care, though. Every week, she had to look Dean in the eyes and act like he was the one for her. And admirers believed every word of it. It wasn't hate or love behind the scenes, as it wasn't what we all thought, it was more like respect. Dean was usually calm, kind, and patient. Melissa said he never went too far or made her feel bad. She liked how nice he was. And how he treated her like a person, not just a co-star. There were only two persons there, trying to finish their work, and the world got too excited about it. Their on-screen over-time romance became one of the most famous love stories on TV. Laura and Almanzo had had few objectives before hashtags were even a thing. Fans received notes asking for more scenes. More kisses, more of everything. But Melissa was still just a teenager in real life, dealing with fame, discomfort, and the ups and downs of growing up in public. She told CBS in an interview, "There was no spark between us. That wasn't how it was." And while that might break some hearts, but it also makes what they did on film much more amazing. It wasn't chemistry, it was just acting. Dean Butler also told his side of the story in his book Prairie and in interviews. He said, "We had to make the romance believable, and Melissa made it simple." He recognized that the age difference made it hard for her to be focused, talented, and fearless. Things hard, and he took his job as Almanzo and as a bodyguard for Melissa. He even said that the network and fans were putting a lot of pressure on him to make it all look it was so natural. But he and Melissa made magic happen, even though there was no true romance. People kept chatting about Melissa and Dean even after the show was over. Some people thought it's possible that they were actually in love and were simply attempting to disguise it. There were a lot of talk. People asked questions during interviews, hoping to learn a major secret. But Melissa always said the truth. She told Entertainment Weekly, "We were never more than co-stars. It was acting. Really good acting. But their narrative has a special kind of charm." When in 2014, Melissa turned 50, and she and Dean got back together for a TV show. There was still a connection, but this time it was all about memories. They grinned, hugged, and spoke about the good old days when they were the most popular couple on TV. No, because they made us think they were in love, even if they weren't. During interviews, Melissa has also thought about how much Dean shaped that time in her life. She said, "During a really confusing moment, he was always there for me. And I'll always be thankful for it." It's not only a hot love story, it's something stronger, a real relationship that lasted through time, unpleasant situations, and people talking about it in public. Melissa has finally spoken up. Fans can relax now that they know the truth. There was no hidden romance, no fascinating controversy, and no love behind closed doors. But what they had was nonetheless unique and beautiful. Two people who came together when strangers became cinematic stars and left with something finer than love, a bond forged on trust, care, and years of shared history. Life after Little House and the legacies it left behind. Not only was it the end of a TV show when Little House on the Prairie ended, it was more like the end of Melissa's youth. The cast and crew were like family to her. She had lived in Walnut Grove for almost 10 years, growing up in front of millions of people. But now, the cameras weren't on, and real life was waiting. That's when things start to go wrong for most kid stars. Fall apart. But things were different with Melissa. Even though it was hard. She had a hard time locate parts that let her get away from her Laura Ingalls image. People still saw her in pigtails, sprinting through fields of wheat. She wanted to do more, be more, and find out what she was good at. As a real woman. But Hollywood wasn't always nice to young women who wanted to change their lives, especially if they were famous as kids. Melissa didn't give up, though. She played parts in movies and plays on TV. Choices of the Heart was one of her best performances. Later on in Babylon 5, she played bolder, darker roles. She also did voice work and she even had a role on Broadway. She pushed herself to stay in the spotlight. But things weren't always easy for her off-screen. She had highly visible romances, such she had a long relationship with Rob Lowe and then married actor Beau Brinkman. That relationship made her she had a son named Dakota, but they were divorced. Later, she married Bruce Boxleitner, another actor, and they established a blended family. That marriage eventually dissolved, although it provided Melissa 2 additional stepsons and years of life experience she would eventually write about. Melissa wasn't scared to talk about her problems. She talked about everything in her memoir Prairie, including her addiction, self-doubt, and broken hearts. And the incessant need to be perfect. She said she had trouble with drinking, struggling with botched plastic surgery and feeling adrift in her own life. She wrote, "There were I didn't recognize myself at times. But instead of hiding, she put everything out there. Fans loved her even more because she was honest." She also had health problems in her 40s. She got surgery after falling on Dancing with the Stars because she had problems with her neck and spine. But she continued going even though it hurt. In 2016, she made news again, this time in politics. Melissa ran for Congress in Michigan's 8th District. She did win in the end, but she stepped out because of health problems, but the campaign highlighted a different side of her, a warrior for change. Then things changed. In 2013, she met the actor Timothy Busfield. This time, things felt they got married in secret, moved to a tiny house in the Catskills, and began a slower, "I wanted to go back to something simple," Melissa said. And she meant it. They cultivate vegetables, raise hens, and often don't have Wi-Fi. She got rid of the she felt like she had to look youthful or be perfect like a Hollywood star. She had her breast implants taken out and "I'll never get plastic surgery again," she told People. "I'm accepting who I am. This is my face. This is me." It was a strong message, especially in an industry that often makes women get rid of every wrinkle and defect. In the past few years, she has gone back to her beginnings, as an author and storyteller, not just as a performer. Her 2022 memoir, Back to the Prairie, tells the narrative of fans adored it when she talked about how moving to the country helped her heal. A broken-down house, severe winters, and learning to live with less. The story, it wasn't fancy, it was honest. That's why people liked it. She also made new methods to make a difference. Melissa started talking freely about becoming older, body image, and mental health. She wanted young women to realize that they didn't have to strive for perfection. They may find happiness in the dirt beneath your nails and calm in your heart. Today, Melissa Gilbert is more than just Laura Ingalls. She's a wife, mother, writer, and someone who talks to she grew up in front of the cameras, which is a lot of bogus stuff. She went through tough moments, recovered herself, and chose to live honestly instead of chasing celebrity. There are still replays of Little House on the Prairie on TV every day. It's not just the fans love Laura and Almanzo. Her genuine legacy is a life that wasn't perfect but was lived with courage, kindness, and power. She reminds us that even if your life starts on a TV show, what do you think of what Melissa said? The real story is what occurs after the performance stops. Please tell us in the comments. If you liked this video, please like it. And subscribe to our channel if you want to see more videos like this one. Click on the video that is playing on your screen.